In the past, I've made several videos about what you should do if you find out that your partner had an affair, whether it's physical or emotional. Both are devastating to the marriage. The good news is that with counseling, you actually can make it. In fact, 2/3 of my couples end up making their marriage better after the affair. They're able to grow in it. Their marriage thrives on better communication. They get along better. They seem to have developed better tactics for dealing with stress or being unnoticed or things such as that oftentimes lead to affairs. Marriage research has taught us that there are things that you can't bring back. And when you see these signs in a marriage, many times what a good therapist should do is be upfront and tell the couple, listen, I think you guys need to talk to a mediator. If you've seen any of these signs in your marriage prior to the affair, then I'm going to caution you with, rather than thinking that, okay, we'll go to counseling and we'll save the marriage, you may be looking at talking to a mediator and a lawyer, because sometimes some marriages are so broken and so unhealthy, you cannot put them back together. And the affair is just one more burden to lay on an already dysfunctional marriage. So here's some of the things we look for. First of all, do you feel criticized and put down in your marriage? Does your partner constantly say things that make you feel bad about yourself? An offshoot of this is, are you living in a relationship with any kind of abuse, physical or emotional? If this is the case, then what I would do is I wouldn't wait. I would dissolve this marriage. I would talk to a lawyer, because abuse doesn't get better. Abuse is an illness and it infests the relationship. And if you're living with somebody who's abusive and cheating, you need to leave that marriage. That is not a marriage. That is an unhealthy relationship that not only you are trying to survive in, but if you have children, this unhealthy relationship is modeling for these kids that this is what's normal, and you don't want to do that. Next, you have difficulty being vulnerable or trusting your significant other. If trust is a real big issue in your marriage, that's going to be really much harder, because now you're really going to decimate any trust that was left because of the affair. You don't enjoy each other's friends or families, so you might begin socializing away from each other. If you notice that you have your friends and they have theirs, or you have your family and they have theirs, and there's no intermixing, there's no joy between the two, you guys don't ever come together with like his or her family, and you don't share those friends, then there's something amiss in this marriage, and that's another sign. Your needs for sexual intimacy are vastly different, or you rarely have sex. This is another thing that a sex therapist can help. A urologist or OBGYN can help. But if you've lived in this kind of a relationship and you haven't made any movement toward getting help, this can really hold you back. It can limit your success with a counselor after an affair. Basically, you've gotten ghosts, or you're still haunted by a past relationship where there was some sort of betrayal or trauma or hurt. And when your partner betrays you with an affair, emotional or physical, this starts coming back, flooding you. Then this is oftentimes the sign of PTSD that you never dealt with, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And so at this point, it may not only be marriage counseling you need, but you may need individual therapy so that you can move past that type of feeling, so that you can basically feel good enough about yourself to work on the marriage. You and your partner have fallen into a pursuer distancing type pattern. Like one of you goes forward, the other one runs away. And when you do that, there's really never a coming together. What that tells me is you hurt each other when you're together. And basically, if one person needs to know the other person is always after them, then they're not trusting being vulnerable and turning toward their partner when they're hurting. In other words, when they need a hug, they're more likely to act out to make you mad so that you will react, because any reaction is better than no reaction. And then with that, they would move toward you and you would move toward them. It takes a crisis to bring the two of you together. It's not a good sign for putting this marriage back together in a healthy manner. When you disagree, you seldom repair the relationship. So disagreements hurt. And rather than resolving them and coming back and saying, listen, I really need to know your point of view, like what you think matters to me. If you can't do that, if all conflicts just turn out with you guys getting further and further away from each other, so there's no coming together, there's no wanting to understand rather than fix something, it's a really bad sign, because you can look now and see how the more of these you have, the therapist is going to try and work on trust and vulnerability. But if you have other things going on that have been swept under the rug for years, and you're fearful of bringing those out, or you're not in a place where you're going to be able to bring those out. If you have the idea that I cheated or my partner cheated, we just want to fix that and move forward, then it's probably not going to work. Because what happens is when an affair is taking place, trust and being vulnerable are the two biggest things to work on. And usually that's why many of them are able to repair it. But if you have some kind of abuse, some kind of long-standing resentment, you've never been able to work out a conflict, you're so far away from each other that there is no turning back, then it's wise to start thinking ahead of time. Make that appointment with a therapist by all means, but also make that an appointment with a mediator. Mediators bring out the best in dissolving a marriage. So if the marriage does have to dissolve, at least the children and the marriage will not be run through like just a terrible, disgusting fight, and you'll be able to make it so that everybody can come out not getting any more hurt than they need to get. I hope this helps you, because sometimes what happens is couples come in and they spend so much money and time because they think they can throw money at it, and they think if they just keep working on it. Some things are unrepairable at this point, and it's important that you are aware of that too. Coming from a therapist, it may help you with credibility and understand that this is a truth that you have to face before you even start the process.